I am in Melbourne, Australia, and I'm going to take you guys for a little walk today. I'm on Flinders Street, and this is probably one of the busiest streets. Indeed, this is the train station just here. I'm going to go just up here and then turn left and walk down Swanston Street. And I'd say Swanston Street is probably the busiest foot traffic street in Melbourne, Australia. It's literally the centre street, or the kind of like the spine street of the city centre. Almost all the trams that are in Melbourne, there's about maybe 15 lines, just roughly, in Melbourne, and I'd say 12 of them run down that strip. No cars are allowed, it's only trams and pedestrians, and it's super busy. So if you like a little bit of people watching and a little bit of just sussing out some of the shops, some of the infrastructure, come along for a walk. So this is Flinders Street Station. This is, as I say, the largest train station actually in Melbourne, Victoria. So I'll wander up here about another minute. I'll turn left into Swanston Street. This itself, if you're watching on a map, I'm headed east at the moment. East towards Swanston. And I'm on the southern side of Flinders Street. The city centre's in a kind of interesting condition at the moment because there's a lot of construction going on. There's a lot of redevelopment. You can see here the boundaries of redevelopment. Obviously they're going to build something on top here. See the cranes prepping. I believe there's another metro line going in. So there's actually the city loop here now. When I'm filming this, it's towards the end of November 2022, and they're building a second metro loop. There's currently a metro loop underneath the city centre here with 3 underground stations, and we have a lot of congestion problems here in terms of transport. The trains in particular are terrible, really are by international standards. They're just appalling. But there's one of the most famous bits of infrastructure, very famous church. And across here, I'll just quickly show you Fed Square, but again, there's a little bit of construction because they're building, I think, 3 or 4 new metro stops. There's going to be 2 separate loops inside of the city centre. So on the other side here is Fed Square, and this was built in the early 1990s, and it was very controversial because it kind of looks a bit ugly, to be fair, or unusual, unconventional anyway, and unconventional things can age very, very badly, right? So across here is Fed Square. Sorry, I can't do 2 things at once. I'm trying not to bump into people, so I'm not talking. So there's Federation Square again, lots of construction going on. There'll be a new station there as well. So it's a bit of an under construction kind of CBD at the moment. Alright, so that's south, that's along St Kilda Road across the Yarra River. So I'll now turn this way and head north, and this you can see just there's a famous pub here on the corner called Young and Jackson. Very famous pub. Because Melbourne's a funny place. Melbourne used to be, like the inner city of Melbourne used to be all about kind of factories and housing working class people and lots of pubs and stuff like that. That's kind of how Melbourne was set up, and over the years gentrification has changed this, and then factories have moved, and so have the workers, and so have the pubs. But some of the pubs have stayed, partly nostalgia, partly commercial reason. This Young and Jackson's very, very famous for that. I don't recommend you go there necessarily, but yeah. Melbourne, of course, is actually, I should tell you this now, is actually my home city, so I know it very, very well. So your tour today will be full of extra little bits and pieces. What you will notice are these trams on the right-hand side here going up and down, and there's several generations. We have 4 generations of trams dating back to the 1960s. Then we've got the latest ones, which I believe came from France. I believe they sold us like 10 or so of these big Bumblebee model trams. So because we're headed into summer, it's a Friday afternoon around 4:30, because we're headed into summer, there's quite a lot of foot traffic. You go down here during the winter, there won't be many people around. It's pretty bloody cold. If you haven't been to Melbourne before, Melbourne's kind of deceptive in how cold it is. You might see on the temperature records, it's 12 degrees in the winter, but that 12 degrees is freaking savage. It's windy, it's cold. I've just spent the last year living in a European country in the north, and I can tell you that minus 15 doesn't feel much colder than what it does when it's 10 degrees here in Melbourne. So a lot of wind and a lot of rain, and these city streets kind of empty out, but a good feeling here. Definitely feels a lot different to when I was last here during COVID, when the streets were empty. Everyone was locked up, streets were empty. So as I say, got lots of trams. See, this is a more modern one here, mainly standing room. And the one coming in the other direction is more of a late 80s, early 90s build. No, sorry, this is the older style here. I'll just show you, because Melbourne's kind of known for its trams. This is kind of more like a 60s, 70s one here. A bit of a rattler. This one here is more of a kind of early 90s model. I remember this one coming out when I was a kid. A little bit bigger. It's kind of high tech back in the day. And again, that's one of the older ones there. So those older ones don't even have air conditioning. They're pretty torturous during the summer, but the other ones are quite nice, quite comfortable. Trams look nice. They're terribly slow. But Melbourne is not a transport kind of city, you know. It's more of a driving kind of a city. So this is Flinders Lane if you're following along at home. Flinders Lane here. Very famous Ben and Jerry's popped up there as well. So let's cross over, headed north. A little bit about some of the shops here. So Sushi Hub's very famous. It's kind of known for its innovation in the sushi market. So sushi is pretty plain, boring food. For the most part, they're sushi rolls, but they actually have quite a good range, should I say, of different flavours. You'll find about 10 of those floating around. Krispy Kreme, of course. So when I meet foreigners here in Australia, the first thing they say about the city centre is, where are the Australians? Meaning they expect to see people like me, but the reality is most like Aussies, if you will, skip Aussies or whatever you want to call us, we don't tend to live in the city centre that much, you know what I mean? So you get a lot of Asian students, because there's a couple of universities, there's RMIT in the city, University of Melbourne kind of nearby, a lot of language schools. So you get a lot of foreigners in the city centre, a lot of Western European backpackers, a lot of Latin Americans as well, I'll come back to that. But yeah, a lot of Asian students, especially from China. I don't know how many there are in Melbourne, there'd be a lot though. Most of these tall apartment buildings that are new in the city centre are kind of housing them. So you'll notice a high proportion of Asian students walking around, and of course a lot of them get onto visas and stick around, so it's quite a density of Chinese, just random ones, Thais, Filipinos, Indonesians, Vietnamese, etc. And also, a lot of Latin Americans. You actually meet a lot of Colombians here, a lot of Brazilians, because obviously you'd think they'd go to America because it's kind of closer and it's kind of in the same time zone, but they're not allowed to work when they study there. So when they come to Australia, they're actually allowed to work here as well as study. There's a limit on the hours, and of course they just do their limit that they're allowed to do. They do some cash in hand stuff, right? Obviously. But they're able to kind of work and study here, because to pay the fees for, say, 1 year English course, they're probably going to need to work here to pay for it, right? Because chances are they haven't got financial backings to pay these fees kind of straight out. Melbourne is very well known for its coffee, by the way. You didn't know? Which goes back to a lot of Italian migration. There was a big wave of Italian migration in the early 20th century, which set up a place called Lygon Street in Carlton, one suburb from where we are now. In fact, if you just follow this street up for about 20 minutes by foot, you'll probably get very close to it. So that's got a lot of cafes and restaurants, Italian restaurants. And there was a big second wave of Italian migration in the early 1950s. Indeed, my grandfather came from Italy during that time, and bringing their typical kind of Mediterranean culture, right? Like Greece, Turkey, Italy, they all kind of do the same thing, hang out, drink coffee. They kind of brought that to Melbourne. So now Melbourne has this kind of crazy coffee culture, and something that people take quite seriously. So you get a lot of small cafes poking around. Although in the city centre now, things have quietened down a little bit post-COVID, but people don't come to work as much as they used to. Staying at home a lot, and as I say, Australians don't tend to live in the city centre. So there's a lot less foot traffic as a result in the city centre. Alright, we're getting up towards Bourke Street Mall, so you'll notice here that there's no cars. I mean, that dude's there, but he doesn't know the rules. A couple of cyclists, a lot of those delivery drivers you'll see. A couple of girls on scooters there. Scooters are actually banned in Sydney. So as I say, I'm in Melbourne now, they're banned in Sydney, I believe. And the rules around using them here are fairly strict in terms of pace and where you can do it. And kind of typical for Australia, having a lot of rules and regulations around different activities. So we're up to almost Bourke Street Mall here. I might even take a little bit of a sideways cut because, oh, here's some pizza on the way through. I might take a quick left here because this is Bourke Street Mall, and it's not a mall in the way you think a mall is. It's not a shopping centre per se, but it's a no traffic section of the road where there's a lot of shops and it's a bit of a retail hub, but it's not a shopping mall per se. We don't call them shopping malls in Australia, we call them shopping centres. So we call Bourke Street Mall here. You can see there, Bourke Street. And Swanston Street, you got some nice numbers there so you can kind of work out where you are. Bourke and Swanston. So I'll actually just turn left here and just quickly show you Bourke Street Mall because it's a bit of a shopping hub, as I say. Somebody preaching over there. Sounds like he's preaching some Christian ideas. I should warn you, Melbourne is quite a political city. It's probably the equivalent of something like a Portland in America, or maybe California, loosely speaking. People often say that I'm just aware of the monetization situation with that video. Just give me a second. With that music, you probably heard from the store. Yeah, people often say that Melbourne's kind of like the California, and Sydney is more like the New York. It's more competition, more business, blah, 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 blah. Whereas Melbourne tends to be a bit grungier. There's David Jones, very famous department store, upmarket department store. I actually had a job there when I was a student back in the day. Myer, slightly lower version of it, but still kind of a middle to upper class kind of retailer. So we'll just go up to the next street and we'll do a Yui. So Yui is Australian for U-turn. And what you do get as well is a lot of buskers. This dude here pumping it out. You need a busking license, so here in Melbourne, you get a busking license, you got a trial in front of the... trial in front of the government, just a quick, it's like a 5-minute thing just to make sure you're not a total idiot, and then you're allowed to busk. And they have fairly strict rules and etiquette around who busks where and when. You can see there, if you look closely back then, there was a guy actually waiting for that guy to finish. So he has a shift for half an hour, and then the other guy kind of swaps over. Because you can't just sit there singing or playing music for 8 hours. You fall in a hole. Maybe an hour is enough of that. Right, this is Elizabeth Street. This is another quite popular street. If you didn't understand how this city works, if you go up that way, it's Spencer Street, and then it's King Street, William Street, right? King William, Queen Elizabeth. Right? It kind of has this rhythm about it. There's a lot of streets in the city centre, but it's all grid pattern. So it's a grid pattern, even though it's not 1st Street, 2nd Street, 3rd Street. Still a grid pattern. Of course, H&M everywhere. This is also known as the GPO building, which is General Post Office, because it used to be, not surprisingly, General Post Office. So that's headed north along Elizabeth Street. Oh, I've got a green man here. So I will turn right here, which will take us back to Swanston Street. And this is the usual spot where they have buskers here. So there'll often be a busker here. And then people just kind of prop up, just kill a few minutes, just have a bit of a watch of whoever it is. So, not here yet, but will be shortly. Kind of informal thing. It's a bit of a meeting spot as well. Just meet on the steps here. I actually met a friend of mine a few days ago on those steps. It's kind of a normal thing to do. Normal place to meet. Everyone knows where it is. Now these, I'll just stop you for a moment because these are very famous in Melbourne. This is what's called the Myers Windows. So Myer is the department store, you can see there. And every year they put on some kind of Christmas display here. So it's quite famous. You can see the queuing up here. So people come from the suburbs with their kids. plonk them in there. A bit of a suss out. So you can see here quite a bit of infrastructure, like an airport, queuing up to get tickets from the checking your luggage here. So you can see the crowds are anticipating. It's kind of early or late Friday afternoon. So they're in anticipation probably of tonight and probably anticipation of the weekend as well, actually. So nice and lots of capacity there. So definitely good vibe here. It's my memories of this mall is actually quite negative memories because of COVID and just how dead the city was and just how bloody depressing and miserable. So it's great to come back to Australia first time in a couple of years and see it feeling very vibrant. And got a little food here ready to get pumping. So we're almost back to Swanston Street here, and we'll turn left and continue on. But yeah, this is definitely, the way I've taken you is definitely the most heavy foot traffic area in the city centre. And Melbourne's a pretty spread out city. You don't get a lot of streets with a lot of foot traffic, you know. It's a driving city, so this is definitely the peak of it.
About 4 inches up from the 4 or 5 inches up from the ground.
There's a money changer there. I didn't show you the exchange rates. They weren't too bad actually. Probably a 5% either way buy sell spread. Not horrendous. This dude's a bit of a preach. Alright, so we'll turn left here, back into Swanston Street, and we'll continue north. Now we're going to go past Chinatown, so the next block, this is Bourke Street, Little Bourke Street, is the next block. And to the right is Chinatown, and that goes for kind of 2 blocks, but it kind of spreads out everywhere really nowadays. Lots of different Asian restaurants. Lots of Thai, Vietnamese, Korean, Japanese, you name it really. It's pretty much all here, even Indonesian, even some Filipino tucked away. So this next block, I might, it will be a bit quiet down there now, but I might just take a quick detour. If you want to have a little bit of a look, I'll at least cross the road there and shove the camera down so you can see. It's not super impressive during the day, but at night time it definitely comes alive. Especially on a Friday night, people going for after work drinks and meals with colleagues and stuff. You can get very busy down there in search of some dumplings. So it's just on the right here. I'll just navigate between people. There we go. Got a nice green man there. We'll get across. So this would be the entrance here. It's kind of not super crazy impressive. It's probably the same one that's been there for 50 years or more. This is kind of, this block in particular, but also really the next block. As I say, it's officially this block, but realistically it does extend to surrounding areas as well, right? So I won't walk up there, as I say. There's not a lot of action going on at the moment because it's not quite dinner time. So what I will do though is I'll cross back on the other side. It's getting a bit warm today, so I'm going to cross back over. It's a bit cooler, so I don't sweat too much. So this was Little Bourke Street here. They probably have a street sign up somewhere. There we go. Little Bourke in Swanston. So you can see the numbers there, the street numbers. So obviously 0 starts this way, runs this way. Swanston Street started where we started at 0, and we've got already the 230. So you'll notice, I'll slow down for a moment, you'll notice the density of restaurants. You've got a burger place, kind of random Taiwanese street food, just some fried stuff, and then a bubble tea place here as well. So in theory, you'll notice people kind of walking everywhere. In theory, in Australia, you're supposed to walk on the left. But these kind of, loose social etiquette things that kind of die off. I'm going to lead by example here. Go back on this side. It's also confusing because there's so many Chinese in the city centre. They tend to walk on the right because that's what they do. This is a great place. You probably know it. Dragon Hot Pot. It is delicious. Get your own ingredients there. They cook it up in a soup for you. It is good. It's a free plug for them. So yeah, it gets a bit more confused even because a lot of in China, they walk on the right side. And they come here and walk on the right side, and people kind of run into each other and do this weird dance thing. And you can see some people just wherever. So they end up just kind of following, I'll just trail this guy. So we're getting quite north in the city centre now. This is QV. There's a big department store there, Big W, nice and cheap if you're going to come here as a traveller or on a 1 year kind of working holiday visa. Woolworths underneath that one as well. We'll continue on. There's another train station coming up called Melbourne Central, though it's underground. There's also, what the hell is that building? National Library. State Library. And I might at that point maybe cut the footage. We'll see how I feel. See how chatty I feel. So this would be Lonsdale Street, and if actually you turn right here, it used to be fairly Greek. There's still maybe 4 or 5 Greek restaurants down there, but if you time it right, there's definitely one massive Greek festival. I don't know when it is during the year, but if you look out for it, it really takes over the city centre. They block up all the roads and it gets pretty exciting. So I'm just blocking my nose to stop myself from sneezing, because if you notice these trees, they give off a lot of pollen. Ooh, almost sneezed it. They give off a lot of pollen, so what you get this time of year is the wind blowing these off, and you get some pretty strong winds in Melbourne, as I said. And if you're a bit of a sneezer, you're going to sneeze a lot here. There's some inside intel for you. A couple of Starbucks still remaining. Most of these shut down in Australia. Most Starbuckses. But like everywhere, they're not really coffee shops. They're really work from home options for people. You pay their $7 or whatever for a coffee and then sit there for 4 hours with the Wi-Fi. So you can hear another busker going. It's probably about the 6th so far. I'll just go to the side of the road here. It's a pretty common area for them to prop up as well. Some fairly random dude. If you look up closely, he'll have his busker pass there as well. They have that on display to show that they're qualified or allowed, regulated. Qualified sounds really formal because they're not always that good, you know what I mean? Some are really good, some are mixed, some have been horrible over the years, but generally okay. See, this is the State Library over here. Probably somewhere you might not want to go, but it's a bit of a landmark, bit of a monument. Again, it's a bit of a meeting place as well. Also a bit of a zoom. See, it's a meeting place. People meet on the lawn there. Let's wait for this tram to go past. As I said, I think there's around 14 or 15 tram lines in Melbourne, and I think all but about 3 of them go along Swanston Street here. But yeah, people can meet in and over here. So a church here, which is quite prominent, mainly Chinese, I think, because of course they can't really have religion. I know it's controversial to say that, but let's just be honest. So they often come to this church here. If that's your thing. I don't know if you are a Latin American maybe coming, might be. So you can see there, number 333, Swanston Street. So we're getting really close to what I would say almost the northern border of the city centre. There's a university up here, so I'll just show you. So there's a kind of a shopping centre just here on the left called Melbourne Central, and that has a train station at the bottom of it. And then once we cross over, it's a university there, RMIT, Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology, which probably doesn't go by that name anymore, but I'll take you up there anyway. I am aware that some people watching this are considering coming here. As I say, that working holiday visa is pretty popular for the 12 months. And you do your 3 months on the farm, you get another 12 months. Oh, how dodgy are we? We make it go do the hard work, picking potatoes. Go pick those potatoes for another 12 months visa. Yeah, we're pretty nasty, but oh well. Grin and bear it. So this would be Latrobe Street. And I guess technically this is not the northern border of the city centre, but it kind of is. Because all of this here is just kind of the university RMIT mainly. And this building, so you see how they're, I'm not sure if you can tell on the camera there, it's kind of an empty site. You can see one crane there. This is going to be the tallest apartment building in Melbourne. So this is going to be 100 and something levels. At the moment, I think the tallest is like 86 or something. The Eureka building down in on South Bank there. So over time, depending when you watch this, that may have changed. But they were doing this in 2020. So I was living close by here in 2020. And this was in the same situation. The crane was there, blah, blah, blah. We're all lined up and ready to build, and I have to say, quite frankly, coming back 2 years later, not much has changed. So I don't know if they're going to actually build that, but anyway. I actually know a guy who lived in a little apartment block there before I got pulled down, and it was a bit of a rat's nest, I have to say. A lot of a rat's nest, actually. That's one thing in Melbourne, you get a lot of very small apartments, a lot of built for students, travellers, kind of lower budget. See a lot of small ones in the city centre. There's a couple of odds and ends restaurants here, and there's actually the university. I'll show you one more thing. So a couple of basic KFCs and another cafe or whatever. And then this side is all just you can see the signage there, RMIT University. In Australia, the building industry is extremely corrupt, so this lady here should be earning probably over 100,000 US a year by just standing there. And because of gender hiring policy, no doubt she was hired for her gender and has a good life there, and as a result apartments are a lot more expensive than they should be. Now building's not an easy job, don't get me wrong, it's laborious, difficult, but yeah, the union's very strong here in Melbourne, because Australia, I mean, at the end of the day we're quite a working class culture, you know. We were convicts, of course, and most migrants until the 1990s who came over were usually working class migrants, villagers and whatever from other countries, so that reflects a lot in our culture. And hence you have this kind of very strong building union, which, yeah, pays its staff a lot of money. So this is a bit more of RMIT, but I want to show you one more thing, as I say, because if you are living in the city centre, and if you are coming from Southeast Asia or China or maybe Latin America or even Western Europe, as a backpacker, you're probably going to live in the city centre. There is something like 100,000 apartments in the city centre, so although at the moment things are pretty tight in terms of rentals, but there's a lot. But if you are, you're going to want to eat, and this is a very cheap supermarket I'm going to show you, because the two supermarkets in Australia, Coles and Woolworths, have 80% market share, and they're really expensive. To be fair, I'm quite shocked at just how much they cost. When you just go to the market or go to Aldi, you can actually see one of the signs here, and sometimes it's as much as half the price for the same thing. So, and they don't really pretend to be nice either, Coles and Woolworths. Like, by international standards, they're friggin' terrible, I have to say. I mean, in terms of restaurants, in Melbourne, you're not going to get much better, but in terms of supermarkets, Jesus, they're pretty horrendous. Overpriced, grossly inefficient. Their margins aren't that big. Like, you can go on the stock exchange and actually see they're both publicly listed, those companies, and you can see their operating margins, they're not huge. So obviously they're grossly inefficient in how they do things. But this place, Aldi, is not a bad place if you want some cheap. There's quite a few backpacker places near here as well, and they'll go to here as well. I'll quickly just show you. So this is kind of the border of the city centre officially here, and it turns into the suburb of Carlton. That's the Baths there, Melbourne Baths, big swimming pool. And I'll show you this Aldi, and there's also a big market you'll want to get into if you're, again, this is who are going to come here. there's a big market called Queen Victoria Market, and that's up to the next street and then turn right for another block or two. You can't miss it. It's kind of big. This is Aldi, just, I don't want to advertise them too much, but you know, the reality is you'll work it out, or once you network here, you'll work out what's going on in that space. So what I'll do is, I've just hit 30 minutes, and I recognise that if you're still watching, it's probably pretty interesting for you. So what I'll do is I'll just walk, and I'm actually back in Melbourne. I'm a Melbourne-born person, as I said, but back here for just 12 days visiting people. And luck would have it, a friend of mine is not here at the moment, so I'm staying in his apartment. His apartment's about 10 minutes walk this way. So I might take you at least a little bit of the way. I'll cross here as a starting point. So this is again one of those new stations they're building. This has again been here since 2020. I'm not sure how much progress is going on there. It seems to take a whole lot of time to do this stuff, especially again, very regulated labour market here in Australia. I think in a place like China, you might have this thing done in 6 months or 12 months. This is a very famous apartment block here, Victoria 1. So it's on the, no, sorry, it's not Victoria 1. It's on the corner of, actually it could be called Victoria 1. It's on the corner of Victoria Street and, what's the other street? I forget, Bouverie. I think it's Bouverie Street. So look at that bad boy. Nice and fluorescent. This is quite a famous building, and I remember them building this because they would build it up to here, and they'd have the scaffolding and whatever going up here, and they'd finish a clump of them, and people would move in, and they'd move up here, and then they start finishing this part. Then they'd move in, and they'd finish the next part, then they'd move in. So I watched that. I worked just near here when I lived in Melbourne. So I'll give you a bit of a look at the skyline. There are a lot of these high buildings, and most of them are post, well, that one's 1990s there. That's a rarity. The rest of them are post the year 2000, when this kind of education boom has really taken off. Globalization's really hitting the overdrive. As I say, some of these apartments, goodness, they're small. Very, very small. So we're about to cross over. This is Victoria Street, which turns into Victoria Parade. We're still on Swanston Street. You can see all the trams still going crazy. And the trams stop where most of these trams end is in about maybe 500 metres. That's the end of the line at Melbourne University there. So this, when we cross over here, we'll be changing suburb. We're going from the city centre, postcode 3000. Where's my finger? Here, postcode 3000. Cross over, postcode 3053. Carlton, and yeah, very popular among students because you've got the university just here, and that's all RMIT there. See the signage, and then Melbourne University is maybe 7 or maybe 900 metres walk up this way. So you can see here sprinkled with student accommodation up and down Swanston Street, and kind of behind there as well. There's a lot of student accommodation. Erected, constructed. Walk up a little bit longer. As I say, I'm just walking home now anyway. I'm staying at my mate's house. He's off overseas somewhere, and it's like beautiful. His other mate's still living there, so it's like, just give me the key and I move straight in, jump in his bed and take his shelf on the refrigerator, take his cupboard in the kitchen, and yeah. Actually a gym in behind here as well. That's an old Carlton United Brewery, so a famous old brewing company in Australia. Inside there's a gym as well. So this is very new. They were building this during COVID. Escape, a few of these have popped up. So it's also sprinkled. There's a lot of places like this, right? Malatanga. So a lot of Chinese students. Kataisky. A lot. So I'll tell you a secret. I was a lecturer at this university we're coming up to, Melbourne University, back in the day. And I'm putting this footage on 2 different channels. So One of those is very small, one's very large. So if you're watching me on the very small one, you're thinking, mate, what are you doing? You had tenure at university, ranked 32 in the world, and now you're walking around doing this shit. So it depends what channel you see this on. But yeah, when I was there, so what happened was in 2016, I think it was Times came out with a university ranking, and they ranked Melbourne University ranked 32 in the world. And at that point, the Chinese enrollments doubled. Actually doubled, and that's how I got my job, because there was so much more demand, especially in the business faculty. I was lecturing in economics, and it just boomed. Yeah, so as a result, all this infrastructure pops up. Mulatang, hot pot, various other things as well. All this kind of pops up, and they start expanding. I mean, the building I started in has been pulled down now and replaced by like a 12-level building. I think it was about 3 level when I started, a bit of a rat's nest, but they pulled it down and refurbed. Well, not refurbed, pulled it down and reconstructed, I should say. It's a pretty ugly one now. I've been inside there. I've been inside a lot of these, different friends and whatever, having lived here or done inspections, or when I bought an apartment, I looked at some of these buildings. This one's a real boxy one. That's not aged very well, I have to say. Not aged very well at all. So if you get in there, you can walk down to the Carlton Gardens, a 500-metre walk. Lovely spot, Carlton Gardens. People sit and just kind of put a little rug out. They sit there, have a picnic, and have a good life. It's quite a social place. There's a basketball court there, it's quite famous, tennis court. A lot of chill out time, a lot of blanket time. Chilling out. So you can see we're getting really close to the end of the line, I reckon. See where the trams are there, I reckon one more stop, that's the end of the line. So yeah, as we get to the university, the demographics are going to become more and more student, as you can probably see just looking around. And mainly foreign students, because local students in Australia, we don't have the culture of living on campus. It's like America where you move, people go in the same city and prefer to stay with their parents as a general rule of thumb, unless they're from rural areas and there might be some on-campus accommodation or what have you, some variation or option. But for the most part, these apartments will be filled with foreign students. So as a result, that's the feel on the street of foreign students around. So you can probably see there a really ugly old brown brick building, and that's part of Melbourne University. Let's get my finger out there. There it is. That's the corner there of a street called Grattan Street, which is indeed where I'm living at the moment for the 12 days that I'm in Melbourne. I'll put you back to a 1 point, we'll go down to 1.5 zoom, check that out. So these are all new as well. I mean, none of this would have existed year 2000, but slowly over the 22 years, you've seen a hell of a lot of construction in the area. Nice little park over there. This is Lincoln Square, if you care. Lincoln Square. Bit of a chill out spot. Smallish. Has a children's playground. You hear that ding ding of the trams. That's like vintage Melbourne. Warms my heart when I hear that grinding sound on the tracks, and that ding ding is like, I'm home. I am home. Ja verdomme, ja. Ja verdomme. So I'm going to get to this next street actually and turn right, and you'll start to see some back streets. So now we're deep in university territory. A lot of these side buildings and stuff will actually belong to the university. Although there's a campus proper up there, in reality it's kind of dispersed everywhere. There are a lot of buildings down random side streets and whatever. And I was actually, that block there, that's where I started working there when I worked there. And now it's an apartment block. Obviously sold up and did something else. Development $1. So this is Argyle Square. In fact, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give you guys some serious bonus footage. So I know there's not many people left at this stage, but surprisingly though, when I watch this, I'm at tick over 40 minutes. I know that there still will be probably 15 or 20% of people still watching. So I'll keep going. What I'll actually do is I'll go around here and onto Lygon Street. So Lygon Street is, I guess, unofficially Little Italy, you might want to call it. It was kind of built up with Italian restaurants in the early 20th century, around kind of the 1919s. So I say the 19-teens. It's been about 100 years of Italian restaurants, and yeah, it's diversifying now. There's more Asian places there. There's Kilkenny, famous Singaporean place, a couple of Thai places, a couple of Indonesian, a bit more variety there, but it's still primarily Italian, some Arab places as well. Still primarily Italian, lots of ice cream shops. So I might just take you up there for a few minutes. I'll just do a block, show you what's there. Let's get across here without getting too run over. This is Argyle Square. Again, just a nice little random patch of grass. Kind of chill out there if you so desire. There's often a few festivals in here, so it's a little bit of a, well, it depends what you want to call it. I'm scared to give it a name because different words mean different things in different countries. But I think this is called a plaza, or the plaza here. And you can see there's a little stage. Let me zoom in for you. Little stage there, and that flat area there, you might have, I don't know, like an Indonesian festival or something. And you might have 20 food stalls there, or maybe someone performing on the stage there. These things pop up fairly randomly over the year. So we get up here. This is Lygon Street here. We're about to enter. We're kind of more, I guess, about the middle of Lygon Street, but maybe a little bit more to the south. So we'll get up here and we'll turn left and get into the heart of, I guess, where the greatest density of Italian restaurants are. So that's headed south. If you go that way, kind of see some of the city buildings there. And up here is the Carlton Gardens. I'm in a bit of a mood to walk and talk now. I was about to wind this up 20 minutes ago, and now I'm like, you know what? I'm in the groove, bro. I am in the groove. So that's Carlton Gardens down there. Quite nice Carlton Gardens, I'm a fan. Quite nice to sit in. As I say, people get a picnic rug there. Get a few bevos, as we'd call them. Bevos being Australian slang for beverages, which is just kind of a bogan way of saying a couple of beers, maybe a frisbee, take your dog down there for a walk, throw the picnic rug, and have a nice life. So this is Lygon Street. It's really quite nice. It's changing though. It's kind of evolving. It's becoming slightly even more Arabic, but it's still mainly Italian in terms of restaurants, but the clientele tend to be increasingly Arabic as well, as the Italians kind of disperse into Australian society. So I'll just walk up this street here, just this one last block, and show you what's up, and I'll curve back around and go into my place. So what we do have on Lygon Street here is, I would say, oh goodness, 40 Italian restaurants, maybe 50. You see here, ice cream shop, probably about, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 of these sprinkled around. So it's quite well known for the ice cream, but I think a few of them are shut down with COVID, and a lot of them shut down and haven't opened up again. As I say, a lot of people don't come to the central area quite so much as they used to. I was expecting all these closed places to be open. So some of these are pretty iconic. Centura, Naterno is pretty iconic in the area. All these places are really. You can see the capacity here. It's got that morning before the tourist rush vibe. And it gets really busy down here. A couple of shisha bars here. As I say, they're kind of more that Arabic influence. In these shisha bars up here, there's 2 or 3 of them in a row. And they get pretty darn busy, especially on a Friday or Saturday evening. So here, as you can see this bloke there with his mate there, stuck on that shisha. So these two here, this one here and this one there, get really busy on a Friday or a Saturday night. Another ice cream place, Gelatissimo. So I've almost finished. This time I mean it. It's another, you'll see now, I'll give you a sneaky little look. Very well presented. Ice cream. So you can see this is like classic Italian style. Restaurants. Hello, madam.
How are you?
Awesome.
Council?
Hmm?
Where do you come from? Council?
Council? No.
Oh,
I'm a YouTuber. No, I'm just
YouTuber?
checking it out. Yes.
Okay,
I'm showing the world
that's good.
this beautiful place.
This is the best waitress then.
Oh, really? Can I show you?
Yeah,
Here we
why
are.
not?
Best waitress, self-professed.
Best waitress.
What's your name?
Ruth.
Ruth?
Yeah.
All right. If they come here, do they get a discount, Ruth, or not?
Yeah, of
Where are we?
course.
Oh, yeah.
Borsari.
Borsari.
Yeah,
Borsari is what we call it.
yeah. It's Olympic champion for bicycle.
Ah, yeah. I remember seeing on top there's something there, right?
Yeah, that's one of the top Italian restaurants in Lygon Street.
One of the top Italian restaurants in Lygon
Homemade
Street.
pasta as well. Borsari.
I like
It's
it.
one of the top fancy restaurants.
I hope your boss sees this
Yeah.
and feel your pay packet getting lined.
Yeah, why not?
Champion. All right, appreciate it,
He's
Ruth.
doing good money as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, you shouldn't say that. You should say it's good value.
Yeah.
Cheap and blah, blah, blah.
I'm saying he got a lot of customer.
Oh, yeah, very popular.
So, yeah, because the homemade pasta for real.
Yeah,
So he got a lot of customer. And you
I
can
bet.
cook too.
I will.
Yeah.
What bonus
And
can I
might
get?
you some glass of wine or cold
You're
beer on
talking the
house
right
for you.
language. I'm living just here actually while I'm in Melbourne, so I can drop down easily.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, Ruth, appreciate it.
Bye.
Later.
See ya.
All right, so this is actually where I'm living now, so I'm going to cut this to an end. So you can see this is still the same restaurant here, so they've got a lot of capacity. Hey, buddy. Interesting, the first, so I've been in Melbourne for, I think, 8 or 9 days now, and I've done a bit of filming, and people have been kind of neutral. Like usually when you film around the world, people jump out in front of the camera and want to have some fun, you know? Say hello, photo bomb, all that kind of shit. But here it's kind of been weird, but today the sun is out and shining and everyone wants to talk. It's funny because Australians are a little bit shy. Oh, would you say that or not? It's hard to say. We're a bit reserved maybe. We probably kept a bit of that British reserved thing in our culture. So it's good to see a lot of people being more chatty today. Being a bit more open and yelling out and photobombing. So, this is the end of me. Thanks guys, hope you enjoyed the video. I've got a lot more of these floating around for Australia. Where else have I been lately? Turkey, Indonesia, Belarus of all places, and I'll probably be adding some from India very shortly as well. So if you want some street walking with commentary, you found the right place.